now that we have our bot connected to our overlay via a socket, and we can now get those two things to talk to each other, which we've done with our goals overlay system. It's now time to play with the idea of having super custom follow, sub, cheer, raid, host, etc. alerts, as well as nice little overlay things that happen whenever someone redeems channel point rewards, whenever the game on the stream changes, whenever the title changes, whenever the stream goes online, whenever the stream goes offline, like all kinds of different things that we can do with real-time events with Twitch. And that is going to require us to use what's called the EventSub system on the Twitch API. So the EventSub system is basically a big list of different events that can happen on your stream. So as you can see, like right here, we get the update event. So whenever we change the category, the title, the broadcast, whatever, trigger an event that happens using this tag. So just like with WebSockets, with our overlay stuff, with the goals overlay and things like that, that's run by events with WebSockets, it's using the same type of idea here, except these are the types of events that we can listen for. So, and there's a metric crap ton of them. So there's a lot of different things that we can listen for. And instead of using WebSockets like we used in the initial setup for this stuff, what we're going to be using this time is webhooks, which goes a little bit closer to something like what you would see in HTTP calls. So meaning that whenever an event happens, it sends a request to a specific web address that you specify. So like right now, all we have here is just the base route for our overlay itself. So if you just go to localhost 4000, then it just sends you to our overlay page. But if we wanted to set up more things, we could set up something like, a route that's called, just event, something like that. And if you go to localhost 4000/event, then it'll do something different depending on what you set it up to do. So that's how webhooks work versus WebSockets. And the documentation for how Twitch has set up the what's called the EventSub portion of the Twitch API, it's all there. Everything that you need is there. You can see it on the right over here, or on the left over here. Mostly everything you need is over here. But the problem is, and I'll leave this stuff in the description of this video, but the problem with all of this is it's not set up in a really cohesive way. It's pretty hard to follow. So if you were here for the last stream, which is not going to be on YouTube besides on my archive channel, but if you were here for the last stream, you'll have noticed that I was just kind of floundering around the documentation, trying to figure this thing out, just trying to make heads or tails of it. And then afterwards, I spent around like 14 hours just trying to make heads or tails of this thing and then build a solution on my own using event subs. And it takes a lot more than what you think, and it requires some external programs to be running, requires you to test different routes on your system or on your bot, and it requires you to get different permissions for your specific Twitch account to be able to give your bot access to do things on your account and on your stream. And so it's a lot of extra things you have to do that you just wouldn't expect. So I will go through all of that briefly here, but this is not going to be all encompassing how to do EventSub setup. This video is just going to be the coding side of it, and I'll just kind of gloss over the different things that you need running in the background. But I will create another video at some point, hopefully soon, that will be a complete top to bottom everything you need to do event subs with Twitch. And that's going to have just starting with a completely new project, starting from the beginning, showing you everything you need to set up, and the entire process, and then showing you again the coding side of things so that you can get event subs working for yourselves, because this is, like I said, not a very simple process. So, just to gloss over the things that you're going to need, first thing you're going to need is Postman, which is the thing that we're going to use to test our HTTP calls. So, whenever you do just a regular address, like if you just go to postman.com, this is what's called a GET request. And as the name implies, all it's doing is it's getting information from a server. It's requesting it and then getting it from the server and then returning the website to you. You can do this for websites. You can do this with data from a database, all kinds of different things. But for the event sub stuff, you're going to need to do post requests. What a post request is typically what a post request is you're putting information to a system. And so in this case, Twitch is trying to make a post request to us in order to give us information. They are posting information to us, in this case, our bot. And so we need to be able to handle post requests, which we're going to be able to do in our bot itself. But in this case, we also need to make a test post request so that we can actually try and receive data, from the testing end of it. You're going to need Postman to be able to do that. You'll need to sign up for an account, and that's all free. Next thing you're going to need is Scoop, which is, if you've been following along from the beginning, you probably already have Scoop. This is a package manager very similar to NPM, which is where we've been getting our Node.js packages. So just follow the instructions here to get Scoop installed. And you'll also need the Twitch CLI, which again, if you've been following along from the beginning, you will probably already have with CLI. So I'll be leaving links to all of these in the description of this video. After that, what you're going to need is another package manager called Chocolatey. And what this is going to allow us to do is grab the SSL library that we're going to need to create a SSL HTTPS, certificate called OpenSSL. There are ways to get this without Chocolatey, but it's just easiest to grab it with Chocolatey. So just download and install Chocolatey following these instructions on this page. Again, I'll put it in the description. And then you can install OpenSSL using this command right here. And then the next thing that you're going to need is something called ngrok, ngrok. And so what this is going to allow us to do is set up, as it's showing here, public URLs for Twitch to be able to talk to. So without this, building webhook integration. So without this, we would actually have to set up a full website and then deploy it to the internet in order to have a web address public that Twitch can talk to in order to send the post requests to us that they need to send to us. And with this, it allows us to create these public URLs just directly on our computer. Just essentially creates a dummy URL that Twitch will recognize and then just send the post requests directly to our bot instead of having to do something like set up a full website. So this is going to be super necessary if you want to keep your bot on your computer, just running everything locally instead of throwing everything on the internet, which is what I want to do with my system. So then I will also post a link to this tutorial. This is part 1 of 3 of a tutorial for handling the Twitch event sub stuff. This tutorial was the basis for a lot of the stuff that I used to show you the stuff that I'm going to be, to learn the stuff that I'm going to be showing y'all today. However, there are some things that I had to change in order to make things work for my purposes. And I'll show you what I changed and why I did it, because there are some things specifically with Node.js and Express, which we're running an Express app that will make this tutorial not exactly viable because of how Express handles certain HTTP headers. So, and I'll explain all of that once we get to it. So, do you only need this part 1 of it? There are 2 other parts, but these other 2 parts work with this specific service up here called Courier, and that's a paid API service. So we're going to be doing all of this for free. So I just used all of the knowledge to get myself set up with this tutorial. And again, I will leave this in the description. So if you wanted to use this as a basis for your own stuff as well. So, and then I'll also leave information for the proper authentication stuff that you're going to need to get started, and the links for the EventSub API stuff that we're going to need as well. So that's the stuff that you're going to need to actually get this running, especially having this NG rock thing. This is going to be essential if you want this to run, and also OpenSSL. So there's, if you just want the bare minimum, you want to get Chocolatey, OpenSSL, and NG rock. If you want to just skip the initial testing phase and go straight to production. If you want to do the testing phases, at the beginning as well, you're going to need to get Scoop, the Twitch CLI, and Postman. So I would just recommend getting everything and just following along as best you can. So this is, like I said, it's rather complicated, but I'll try and demystify the stuff as much as I can. So the first thing that is necessary for you to know is that the event sub system on Twitch requires you to have all of your routes and your information being passed back and forth go through HTTPS. So, meaning that our connection to Twitch needs to be secure. And that requires a bit of extra setup on our part, and it requires us to change some things on our initial setup for how this thing works. So, the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to change some of our imports at the top here. And the first thing we're going to do is we are going to change the require command right here from HTTP to HTTPS. You would hope that you would be done and just be ready to go, but you're not. So the next thing you have to do is you need to add in an extra argument right here where it says create server. And what you're adding in is a JSON object for your options. This JSON object takes 2 things that you need. What you need is a key, and I'm just going to leave this as a string for now. What you need is a key, and what you also need is a certificate. So, and these are where having OpenSSL is really important, because as you can see on the left over here, I created a new folder that has a certificate.pem and a key.pem. So these things are what allows us to send the information securely back and forth between our bot and Twitch. And so since we're not actually using a proper certificate authority, what we're having to do is create what's called a self-signed certificate. And if you're not familiar with security stuff, a certificate is essentially what allows your browser to declare to the internet that you are using certain protocols to transfer your data back and forth between the internet so that you can have some level of assurance between yourself and everyone else that they know that you're using secure practices and transfer protocols, etc., like stuff like that. And it also provides some level of encryption to your data as it goes back and forth as well. So, but since we don't want to actually pay for a certificate authority, which I don't know this for sure, but I think someone in the comments, please correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think that those can get rather expensive. I haven't done that myself yet. I haven't had a need to just yet in my own software career, but I hear that those can get a little pricey. Again, someone please correct me if I'm wrong and give me some extra information to learn from. But anyway, using OpenSSL, again, I will do a much more complete tutorial on this soon, and I'll leave the link to that in the description below. But for now, I'm just going to use the key and the certification that I've already generated using OpenSSL. And the way that you're going to do that is you're going to use the file system that we've already imported earlier. So what we want is we want to do a FS read file sync. And if you'll remember from whenever we were doing our goals overlay initial setup for just like setting up the goals themselves, we did a read file sync so that we can pull in the file and have the program essentially stop execution for everything else until the file was fully imported. And we want to do that for only certain things that if we don't have it fully imported before anything else executes, that it can break. Otherwise, you're just essentially slowing your program down quite a bit. So these two are such cases because if you don't have your key and your certification pulled in fully before you start using them, your program will probably crash. So you're going to use a read file sync instead of a read file. And in my case, I'm going to pull in the cert. We're going to pull in the search folder. And in the search folder, we're grabbing the cert.m file. And then the same thing here. We're going to do a fs.readFile sync. And for this one, we are pulling in the cert slash cert. Sorry, cert.pem. Sorry, I meant to say for the key, we needed to pull in key.pem. That was my fault. Okay, so now we're good. So in addition to this, we need to pull in a few more things. And that is, we're going to have to do some things with a bit of crypto, not cryptocurrency. We're actually talking about cryptography. So we're going to need to pull in another package. We're going to call it crypto. And that's just require crypto. So, and this is a built-in package with Node. So this shouldn't be a problem. You shouldn't have to download anything extra via NPM. So that just goes there. We're going to pull in another specific command from the Express libraries called response. And if I can actually spell, so we're pulling in response from this equals. I started going with the React way of importing things. So we're going to get this from require express. And we're using the curly brackets right here because we're specifically getting something from a JSON command in the express package. And we're also going to import the HTTPS package as a whole. So HTTPS, and we're going to require HTTPS. And that should be all the things that we are going to require. So there's a few extra things that we are going to set up here. So right below our chatbot setup right here, we're going to add in a global constant. And we're going to call that, if you remember, I said that we needed the indie rock thing in order to have public URLs that Twitch can access in order to send data back and forth. So whenever you start Indie Rock, which again, I will show how to do all that with the full tutorial in the description down below, it will produce a URL for you. And this URL is going to change every time that you start Indie Rock. So it's a bit of an inconvenience, especially if you're using the free version of Indie Rock. There is a paid version that does allow you to, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think it allows you to get some extra stuff that I think you can get a static URL. But just in case it doesn't and I'm wrong, you can just every time you start your Indie Rock instance, you just go in here and change the address to this, to whatever you get outputted, and just change that, and this will work just fine. It's a little bit of a pain to get your bot started every time, but it's a necessary evil. And instead of, if you recall, whenever we were using our access token, we have that set up in our configuration file. So instead of using the configuration file's access token, which expires every 60 days, we are going to set ourselves up a bit of a convenience here that will get a new access token every time that we start the bot. And it'll also grab the permissions for things that we need for, working with EventSub stuff. So what you want to do is you want to create a variable. So with let, because this is going to change. You don't want to have this as a constant. You want to have this as a let so it can change. So you want to have this as access token. And you just want that as an empty string. Then we are going to get our access token from Twitch by doing a post request. We're going to request this from Twitch. So we're going to use the request package that we installed up here, which, by the way, as of the recording of this video, I just noticed today, as of April 4th, 2022, that the request npm package has been deprecated. So we may not have access to the request package for that much longer on npm. I don't know that for sure, but we might not. So I will be looking into other types of similar APIs to do things like what request does. I'll probably look into something like Axios or something like that. But for now, if you can still access the request package, use request. If not, I will leave something in the description to show you or in the pinned comment or something like that to show you a alternative for something that you can use. But for now, we're just going to use request since I already have this set up. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do a post request. So request dot post. And this takes in two arguments. So the first argument it's going to take is a URL, which is just going to be a string. And then it's going to take in a function. So the function is going to take in a 3 parameters. So it's going to have an error, it's going to have a response, and it's going to have a body. So this is what we're going to use to handle the data that Twitch sends back to us once we get the data back. So I'm actually just going to copy and paste the address because this is going to be really long, and I'll explain it as soon as you see it because it is gnarly. So the address is, get ready for it, this. So you can see that we have a really long string right here. I think is, like I said, it's gnarly. So what this is doing is copying and pasting, apparently added in some characters that I don't want. So what this is doing is it is giving us all of the types of events that we can actually listen for. So as far as the events goes, each event has a specific amount of permissions that's required from Twitch in order to use them. And so this scope right here, where it says scope, and then equals, and then it's just all of this. These are all the different permissions that Twitch allows for the things that you can let your bot do automatically. So that is, like I said, it's gnarly. You may not want all of these different permissions to be granted. So you might want to go in through these and delete some of the ones. But I just decided to give access to everything in order to give us the most options and the least amount of hassle for whenever we're actually doing these things. So that's what we're doing there. So as soon as I can get all of this taken care of, would be good. Okay. You'll also notice that we have some extra stuff going on here. What we got going on here is we have our API key, which you've seen before, and we also have something new called our API secret. So in our config file, what we want to do is we want to add in new a new attribute here. We want to call it API secret, and that is going to be a string. And this is your, I'll just define it now. It's your API secret given when you created your Twitch app on your Twitch dev dashboard. So whenever you created your Twitch app on this, on this address, whenever we first started out, whenever you create it, it gives you a secret key that you're supposed to note down. That's what goes here. And you never want to show this because this is going to give essentially everyone access to your Twitch app and do things as you. So you don't want that. We are also going to add in a few things that we're going to need later. So we're going to use something later for whenever we're setting up the authentication stuff for the event sub is we're going to have a Twitch signing secret. So whenever we're doing the crypto side of things and we're getting some events from Twitch and it wants to check if we are actually who we claim to be, and we want to make sure that the event is actually coming from Twitch instead of some weird other party, we create a signing secret that we then pass on to Twitch and then we keep ourselves. And depending on the secret that you put in, it will create a what's called a cryptographic hash that is checked against Twitch's cryptographic hash. So, and if those hashes match, then you know that you're talking to the right place. And you have, essentially confidence that you're getting the right things from the right places at the right time. So you want to have this as a really long password with numbers, letters, capital letters, and symbols. No spaces. So ideally, this should be just stupidly long. If you're not doing at least 20 characters or so, don't even bother. But the longer, the better. So you're going to have that. And then what you're going to also need is your broadcaster ID. So what this is just for convenience. If you run a request from Twitch to do, like if we did our overlay stuff again. So like we go back to our get goals command and we're using this address right here. Whenever we get the stream info, part of what you get in the parsed body right here is your numeric Twitch ID. So this is going to change based off of your own stream name. So use this, make a request with your API key and your access token to this address right here. Just change the user login equals from Sir Silverstar to whatever your Twitch name is, all lowercase. And then once you get the body back, just console log it out, and you'll find your broadcaster ID. And it's just a number. So you want to save that here as a string. So mine is, and it's not a big deal if people know what your your broadcaster ID is, because it's just, you can get it easily enough. You should do a API call for, whatever streamer you want. So actually, let's do it now. Let's see. I will, let's see. So node bot. And actually, sorry, I need to do this. I need to undo this. Okay. So we can actually get our event, our information. So then what we're going to do is once I do get goals in chat, you will get all of this stuff. So you can see we get our ID right there, which that's actually not my ID. That's weird. So let's see. Let me try this again. We're going to do is we're going to do data 0. Try this again. Here we go. So here we go. So you want to console log out the parsed body dot data at element 0. What you get is your user ID right here. So right here. That's the ID that you want to put in your config file, right? So right here. So do a call to the config. I'll change this to your user name and copy in the user ID. We'll call to just do this over multiple lines. User ID from, let's just do this, JSON dot parse and body, see at element 0. That's our data. Make sure I'm doing this right. Yeah, data at element 0. There you go. That should be everything that you need for the config file as far as the changes and additions that we're going to need. So that's what you need right there. Something you may or may not want to add in is your user access token for whenever you whenever you get your user authorization or access token from Twitch itself, you will get a specific user access token that's specific to you that you may or may not want to keep. So if you want to have that, put that right there. And I'll leave instructions for that later. But get back to this. What we're going to do next, once we have all that, once we pull in the address, what we're going to do is we are going to take our callback from whenever we get information back from Twitch for our auth token or access token. And we're going to say, if we did not get an error, then we are going to parse the body. We're just going to say const, and let's just call it parsed JSON. All right, parsed body, just to make things clear, equals JSON dot parse. We're parsing out the body. And then we're going to make the access token the parsed body dot access token. And that's it. So now every time we start the bot, we're going to get a new access token, and we're not going to have to worry about things expiring on us. So if we do have an error, what we're going to do is we're going to just say else console.log, and we're just going to console log out the error. Make things nice and simple. And that should be it. That should be it for that. Now, this is where we are going to start working with the event hook stuff specifically. The first thing that we're going to have to do is we are going to have to handle events that come in from Twitch and give us information. So in order to do that, we're going to need to handle certain things just automatically. So what we have right here, we have app.use. We're setting our directory for our static files that give us our web pages. What we want to do, we want to add in a new use declaration. So just use, we're going to just say express.json. And this is a function. There we go. So, and that is just going to parse out all the JSON information for us just to make life a bit easier for us. Then we are going to first set up how we're going to handle our callbacks, how we're going to handle when Twitch gives us information. And this is where most of your tutorials will just kind of go over everything and mostly just stop. And we're going to go a bit further than that. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a new host route. So since Twitch is going to be sending us post requests, we need to take in post requests and do something with them. What we're going to do is we're going to create a new route and we're going to call this route. So slash Twitch webhooks slash callback, because this is a callback function that's going to get run every time that Twitch sends us an event. So then what we're going to do is we're going to set up what happens with that. What we're going to do is we're going to set up an asynchronous function. Now, an asynchronous function that takes in a request and a response. What we're going to do with it is we are going to function. So you'll notice that I put in the word async right here. Whenever the rest of the functions that we've created thus far have just been just regular functions. So the difference between asynchronous and synchronous, just going super simple here, is that asynchronous functions allow you to continue running other parts of your program while this function is running. So it allows you to just not completely block up the program whenever something happens. Whereas if you were to just do a regular function, you have a higher chance of things just getting completely blocked up and everything stops. So because we're wanting these things to happen while everything else is happening with our bot, we want this to be an asynchronous function. So what we're going to do is just to test out our code, what we're going to do is we're going to first handle what Twitch does, or what we do with the events that Twitch sends us. So we're going to put a comment and say handling the Twitch event. And this is probably the simplest part of the whole process. So the way this works is we're just going to take our request body. So the body that comes in with the request, we're just going to create a constant. We're going to create a constant. We're just going to call it event body. And it's just going to be the request body. This is just to save ourselves a little bit of typing. And then what we're going to do for now is we are going to put in a console log that says that we're receiving a request. So we are receiving, my V key seems to be getting a little stuck and double pressing of late. We're going to be getting stuff from the event body. And there's a number of things that are going into the event body. So, and I'll show you all of this once we run it. So we're going to take in the event body description and then the type of event that we return, or that we've gotten. So we're going to take in that we receiving this type of request from the channel that we are receiving the request for. Not from, for. We're receiving a request for this channel, and the channel is going to be the event body event. Well, this is getting kind of weird this way. So this is the event itself and the broadcaster username. And then we are going to also print out the event body just to show everything. And then all we're going to do is we are just going to end the request. So response not end. There we go. Sorry, we can't just end it. First, we have to send in a status of 200 to show Twitch that we received the event successfully. And then we just stop the event. That's it. We're done. So what we're going to do with this is once we get everything hooked up, as we need it to be hooked up, this is going to be where we pass things off to our overlay and do the neat things that we're going to do with it. So then once we're done with all this, what we're going to do is we are going to also do something that Twitch requires of us. If this was all we had to do, this would be simple. But this is not all we have to do. This is all you have to do is you just want to handle the event itself. However, Twitch wants us to also handle challenges that they will occasionally send to just confirm that we are who we claim to be, and we are confirming that Twitch is who they claim to be. So they want to make sure that we can properly send back a challenge response when a challenge is issued. And the way that we do that is by, I'm just going to do another comment that we are handling the webhook challenge. So this is where things get a little more confusing. So what we're doing is we are first checking if the request header, or if one of the headers involved, specifically the header that is, I'm just going to copy and paste this in because this is kind of long. So if the event header is titled this, titled the Twitch event sub message type, if the type of event that we are getting is, and I will copy this again, a webhook callback verification, what we're going to do is we are going to handle that by issuing a response to the challenge. First, we're going to do a console.log to just say that we are verifying webhook is from Twitch. In order to do that, this is where a lot of my confusion came in, because the tutorial that I mentioned earlier in the stream was using Express specific commands, but Express was adding in extra response headers back to Twitch that were not supposed to be there, and was thus creating a problem that was causing everything to fail. So in order to do that without having those extra, pre-generated headers involved, I had to use standard Node.js commands in order to do this. So it looks a bit different. So if you want this to actually work and not have weird things auto-generated by the Express API that shouldn't be, that you can't change from Express itself, here's how you do it. What you want is you want to do response write header. And this takes in two arguments. First, it takes in the HTTP response, so 200, and then it also takes in a JSON object with the header that you want. And in this case, we want a header showing that the content type that we're passing along is just plain text. So content type is a string, and then colon, and you want this to be text plain. And that's that. Then you will write the response directly within, you're going to write the challenge into the response and then just pass it back along to Twitch. So again, using Node commands instead of Express commands. So you're going to use the Node write, and you're just going to put in the request body challenge. And once you're done, you're not just going to say response end like we did before. You need to return this so that the whole route will end. You want this to end before everything else. So otherwise you get weird behavior. It'll try and do another response, but it just won't, because you've already ended the callback, and it's a mess. So then you just do response end. So that is how we handle the callback from Twitch whenever they send us an actual event. And this is just the start of it. Then what we're going to do is we are going to create an extra verification step that will run every time this callback is issued, every time Twitch, uses that callback. And there is going to be a lot of copying and pasting here, because it's a lot of typing. What we're going to do is we are going to create a new function up here, verify Twitch webhook signature. This is another part of just verifying that the things that Twitch sends us is legit, and that the things we send Twitch legit. So mostly just showing that the stuff that Twitch sends us is legit. So webhook signature. Really, it could go either way. So, okay, what it is, we're going to create a arrow function with a request and a response, and then we're going to create a number of constant, and I'm going to just copy those in and explain them. Because, like I said, it is a lot of typing, and I'm sure you don't want me to sit here and wait for me to type all this. So, what we're doing here is we are creating 4 constants. What we're doing is we are getting the message ID that Twitch sends to us. We're getting the timestamp of when the event was sent to us, and we're also getting the signature that Twitch sends us. And then also we are creating a timestamp of what the current time is in seconds right now is. So because we have to verify this within 10 minutes. So this is part of the check that we're going to do here. What we're going to do is first going to check that if this is going to take some math. So if the absolute value, and if you're not familiar with absolute value or you just don't remember it from your math classes, absolute value is just the positive result of any math equation that you do. So we want a positive result. So if you end up getting a negative number, it's still going to return a positive result. And what we're going to do is we're going to say if the current timestamp, the absolute value of the current timestamp minus the Twitch timestamp is greater than 600, meaning that this is more than 10 minutes old, then we are going to throw a new error. We may change this from errors to something else later, but for now, it's going to use errors because this is part of the tutorial that I mentioned and it's working so far. So I'll take this. We're going to throw a new error that says signature is older than 10 minutes. Ignore this request. So after we've checked if the signature is within the valid time range, now we need to check if we are actually, using a signing secret. So I already have this in my configuration file, but we check for it anyway. So if we do not have, in my case, a configuration Twitch signing secret, we should also throw an error. So throw a new error that says the Twitch signing secret is empty or is missing. I don't know why my mouse keeps double clicking like that. Okay, now we can do is drag this down a little further. What we can do is we can, if all of that goes through and we don't get any errors, what we're going to actually do is we are going to create our signature. And this is where the crypto library that we pulled in earlier comes into play. So what we're doing is we are creating a new constant and we're calling it our message signature. So what this is going to be SHA 256. Yeah. And I'll probably end up explaining all of this whenever we do the full video. Anyways, we're going to have this and we're going to create a HMAC. So crypto HMAC. So we are creating a actual hashed value, which a hash is nothing more than taking something and then jumbling it up and spitting out some random value that is based off of something else. So in this case, we're basing it off of our signing secret. And so this is how a lot of encryption works in software in general. This is how a lot of places store passwords, your financial data, various things. So what it is, we want to have this as a HHA SHA 256, which is just the type of algorithm that we're using to hash this. And then we're using the configuration with signing secret as the value that we're using to do the hash. Then we are going to update this using a combination of the Twitch message ID, the Twitch timestamp, and the buffer. that we're working with timestamp and the buffer, which I think I forgot to put this in. So yeah, this is something that I need to add in to the parameters. So that is my fault. I forgot that. So let me get back up here. So we have a request, a response, a buffer, and an encoding. Those are the things we needed, and I forgot those last two. So that's my fault. It's all right. So we're going to take all of that. We're going to update it with a combination of those values. And then we are going to digest it into a hex value. And then we're done. So, and then I'll just, pull this down to make things easier for ourselves, for easier readability. And it'll still work just fine like this. So, and then what we're going to do is once we have our message signature, what we're going to do is we are going to check that if the Twitch message signature equals is the same thing as our message signature. If they both match, then we're good. Actually, let's check for the case in which they don't match first. So if they don't match, then we're going to throw a new error that just says invalid signature. And otherwise, we are going to just console log out that we have a valid signature. And we're done. So that's everything that it takes in order to just receive information from Twitch. So now the question becomes, how do we actually how do we initiate these events from Twitch? How do we tell Twitch that we even want the information? So, in other words, how do we set up a webhook that will then allow us to take in the events that we want to take in? So, in order to do that, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to create another post request. And if that's going to work, is we're going to say app.post. We're going to create a new route. And the route for this one is we're going to call this one /create webhook. And that is going to take in a request and a response, like all the rest. And then we are going to make that into a function. And there we go. So there are a number of things that we're going to be doing here. And I pulled this in from another place. I want to say I got this directly from the Twitch example. I will find it and I will put it in the link in the description below. I'll also probably add it in to the comments somewhere in here. But yeah, so we'll just use what I have and I'll find the source that I got it from later. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a few variables. First, we're going to create a variable for the webhook parameters that we're sending to Twitch that happen just every time. So we're going to create a variable. We're going to call it create webhook parameters. And this is going to be a JSON object. And in this JSON object, we are going to have a number of things. So we're going to have the post be the address to the Twitch API. So, which is api.twitch.tv. And I have another attribute. We'll call that path. And the path is going to be the specific route that we use to get webhook subscriptions. But we're specifically asking for a webhook subscription. So we're going to, the specifics for that, which you can get from the Twitch API, is helix/EventSub/subscriptions. And then we're going to have a method. We want this to be a post request, since we're sending a post request to Twitch and receiving one back here. So, and we want the headers in that post request to be as such. It's going to be a JSON object, and we want the content type, and this is all case sensitive, so make sure you type it just as you see it. Content type to be application/JSON. And we want the client ID, which we were using before with other API calls. So this should be the same thing we were using before. So our client ID is our API key. So we're just going to pull in our configuration API key. And then we have the authorization, which is our bearer token that we generated at the top of the program, at the top of the bot, which will be auto-generated every time. So authorization, and that is going to be a string bearer plus the access token. Oops, I put in the equals. So bearer plus access token. Okay, so and that's it for that. And then we need another variable that is going to actually do the requests for the event that we're listening for, or the event that we want to listen for specifically. So that we're going to create another variable. We're going to let that be the create webhook body, and that is going to be another JSON object. And then here we have is we're looking for the type. And so with this, I'm going to do a little bit of extra stuff that you're not going to see in the source for this. So the original source that I copied this from, I kind of modified it a little bit. So what we're going to do is whenever we submit a request to this, we're going to pass it a query parameter that's going to say the event type that we're looking for. So, and this will become clear later. So you want to put request query event type. That way we can programmatically just say what event that we want to listen for, because we want to be listening for multiple events, because there's a lot of stuff that we want to do with this. So we don't want to just hard code it to one or two things. So let me just do this so I can do this. Okay. So all right. Now the next thing you want is an attribute called version, and you want this to just be 1. Everything in the EventSub API is version 1, so just hard code that as version 1 for now, because Twitch is essentially telling you to. So then you want a condition, and the condition that you're looking for is a JSON object that is specifically the broadcaster user ID, and that is your specific Twitch ID that I showed you how to get earlier. So broadcaster user ID. That's your user ID. So we have that in our configuration, broadcaster ID. That should be that. And then we want another one called transport. So this is the specific type of information that we're looking for. So, or the specific type thing we want to get back from Twitch. So what we're saying is we want the method here to be webhook, because we actually want a webhook back from Twitch. Okay? And then what you want here is callback. And the callback is the webhook callback that we created earlier, this thing up here, this post request with Twitch webhook's callback. And the way that we're going to get to that, because this is what's going to take in all the data that Twitch is sending us. So we're sending in is we want them to use the NGRock URL that's generated whenever we start NGRock, plus the Twitch webhooks, Twitch webhooks /callback. Now, also, whenever you're setting up your app on the dev.twitch.tv, it's going to ask you for a callback address. You want this to be the same thing. You want it to be a localhost 4000 /Twitch/callback. Otherwise, this doesn't work. Actually, no, sorry, ignore that. That's for later. And then we also want to pass in the signing secret, and that comes from our configuration and our Twitch signing secret. And that's it. That's our parameters that we're going to use to send in a request for a webhook from Twitch. So now we actually make the request. The way that we're going to do that is we're going to say, we're going to create a variable called response data, and that is just going to be an empty string. And we're going to create another one called webhook request. And that is going to use the HTTP module. We're going to make a request using the webhook parameters, and then we have a callback function that takes the result. Once we get that, we're going to take in the result. We're going to request something using the parameters. We're going to get something back. We're going to use that result to then set our encoding. So we're going to set our character set, so set encoding to UTF-8. So this is just the character set that Twitch wants when using this. So then once we're done with all this, we're gonna create a listener. We're gonna say once we have a data event, once we receive an event called data, we're gonna create a new function with the event that we get back. Create a new function with the event. This function will allow us to set the response data to, this isn't the event, it's the data that we're getting back. We're not getting back any event, we're getting back data. We're going to take in the response data and we're just going to append it, the current response data, and we're going to append it, the data to it, which I'll just create a new thing. So we should just be able to do this. And then we're going to create another listener showing that when this ends, so when all of this is done, we're going to create another function that takes in the result of everything that we've done, and we will parse the body, do some parse the response data, and then we will send back to Twitch the response body. So response send the response body. Okay, so whenever all of this is said and done, what we're going to do is we're going to create another listener on the webhook request. So if we get an error, what we'll do is we will create a function. Let's call this error, and then we will just console.log the error, see what went wrong. Then we will write on the webhook request the body that we're looking for, so the actual stuff that we're hoping to get an event for. So we need to have this as a string. So since it's a JSON object, we're going to stringify it, and we're going to throw in the webhook body, and then we end the webhook request. And that should be it. That's how we take in and ask for and get events. Oops, that looks like I messed up. It should be a comma. My IDE was yelling at me. Okay, good catch by the IDE. All right, so now that we've done all this, how do we actually make this thing go? The way that we are going to do that is by creating a set of post requests whenever our bot starts that will request the individual events that we want to listen to from the bot or from Twitch, and then set up webhooks within the bot just right when the bot starts. So what I've done is I spent some time getting that ready. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy in a variable. We're going to set that up right here, right after we get our our access token. So after we get our access token, I have a number of events that I want to listen for. This is not everything that we're going to be listening for. We're going to add in a lot more, but this is just some things that we can start with. You can add in as many as you want. So specifically what we're looking at right here is we are looking at getting events for whenever someone redeems a channel point reward, we're getting a notification or an event when the stream is updated, meaning that the game title or the category is changed, or anything of the sort like that gets changed. We'll get notified of that kind of change. And also when someone follows the stream. And you can go in to the Twitch API and get all of the various events that you want to listen to. I'm going to be adding in a lot more to this list, but this is just to get us started. So like if you want to get, for new subscribers, you would follow channel subscribe. And then if somebody's sub ends, then you would follow this. Or if somebody gives a sub, you do this. Or, there's a lot of different things. The caveat here is that you need to be aware of the fact that whenever you get all of the stuff running that we've set up so far, you need to set up a route on your overlay that will allow you to go to another page. So, like, just have a link somewhere on your overlay that you can go and click, and it'll send you to the authorization page on Twitch where it will allow you to say, do you authorize this app to use your Twitch credentials? And it'll give you all of the permissions that it wants to ask for. And as soon as you accept that, these routes and these permissions will work. Otherwise, it's just going to say that you're not authorized to use a lot of things. So in the full tutorial, I will go through that process as well. So in order to actually make the connections, what we're going to do is we're going to set up a for loop, and I'm going to say as long as I is less than the event types that we're looking for length. So that way it doesn't matter how many put in, and how many we put in, it'll always, get what we want. It'll always grab everything we want. Is to, in here, make a request, and this is going to be a post request. So it takes in 2 arguments. We're doing it a little bit earlier, a little bit differently than how we did it earlier. It's going to take in a JSON object, going to take in a function, and the function is just the error, the response, and the body. So it's really, we're not even doing anything with this. We just kind of need it, and we can console log out anything we want here. So I'll just leave it. I'll just put in something for now, just like console.log webhook attempt, and then we'll say the error, we'll say the response, and then we'll say the body. We're actually going to comment this out, because if we leave that in, it's going to just throw up so much information that it's going to be hard to keep up with. We're not going to worry about that for now. So in this JSON object, what we need is we need the URL, which is the NGRock URL that we made earlier, plus the route that we want to create our webhook. So I'm going to say create webhook. And if you remember, I was saying that we were going to use the query parameters to get the event type that we wanted to pull in. So the way that we do that is you add a question mark after the route name. If you look at web addresses, this happens a lot in a lot of places. So what we're looking for is the event type, and that equals the current event type, the current index. That's it. And we just loop through all of this until we get all of the stuff that we want. And we're going to make this method, a post request, because we need a post request for this to work. And there we go. So now, unless I forgot something, this should work. So what we're going to do is we are going to run the bot and connect to the server. I think my NGRock server just timed out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to restart that. Again, I'll show all of this in the full tutorial. But for now, let me just do it in the background. So, okay, so I got a new NGRock address. This is kind of one of the more painful things that we have to go through when we're dealing with this. So if I decided to pull in or pay for NGRock, which is like $60 a year, I should be able to get a more consistent address, and it shouldn't time out as much. But anyway, let's try it again. So we got everything started up just fine, but we don't know if our stuff worked. What we're going to do is, because we have channel point redemptions turned on, what we're going to do is I'm going to make a channel point redemption here and just see if we get any kind of feedback in the console. So I'm going to redeem my old man rant. And if this works, it shouldn't crash, and we should get a result in the console saying that this was redeemed. So 3, 2, 1, and nothing happened. So what happened?